Listen, man, Sean G here, Legwell Insurance Group. I need you to go on that website right now, Legwell Insurance Group, and follow them on Instagram at Legwell Insurance. That's my man, Dr. Dice. You could get you some term life insurance, whole life, fixed annuity. Get you some life insurance, man, so that your people won't have to struggle and won't suffer, when it comes time for you to get up out of here. Because one day it's going to be my turn. One day it's going to be your turn. But get you some life insurance. Tell them Sean G sent you. Legwell Life Insurance Group. These are some good people. I've partnered with them. Take care of your people, man. Whole life, term life, fixed annuity, all kind of life insurance. Legwell Life Insurance. Peace. Y'all, what's up, man? What's up? Share this video with somebody who you know is covering the Puffy trial. You guys are talking about the Puffy trial. Subscribe to the channel. You can follow me on Instagram, The Podcast Was Sold, Spotify, The Podcast Was Sold, and on TikTok, Podcast Was Sold. The MDC Brooklyn, for the last 2 years, federal judges in cases in the Eastern District, New York, and Brooklyn, and in the Southern District of New York and Manhattan, have been refusing to send inmates that are awaiting sentencing or that have been sentenced to a small amount of time to maybe serve their sentences at MDC Brooklyn. The judges have been refusing to send inmates there because the conditions there at the MDC Brooklyn are so bad. The Office of the Inspector General has been notified about the conditions at MDC Brooklyn. The heads of the BOP, the Federal Bureau of Prisons, have been notified about the conditions at MDC Brooklyn. And this all is going to work in Puffy's favor because he is there awaiting sentencing and being held in MDC Brooklyn, where there is another case where another guy who was convicted of possession with the intent to distribute with fentanyl. The judge refused. He got sentenced, or he was awaiting sentencing. He was convicted, and the judge refused to remand him to MDC Brooklyn. So this is another thing working out in Puffy's favor. Number one, he beat the RICO charge and all of the predicate offenses. He beat the SEX trafficking charges, both of which would have given him life in prison. He was convicted of the least punishable crime, which he's waiting sentencing on, which has a sentencing guideline range of 0 to 120 months or 10 years. Most likely, more than not, the base offense level for what Puffy was found guilty of is a 14. He's a category 1, no criminal history. He's looking at between 15 to 21 months before any enhancements. And as we know, as we went over yesterday in Amendment 826, since November 2024, judges are no longer allowed to use charges and conduct that a defendant or an inmate was convicted of as relevant conduct in determining his sentencing guideline range. So I printed out a bunch of articles. Let's talk about the conditions at Brooklyn MDC. This is dated July 19, 2024. This is about a year ago. Congressman Dan Goldman issued the following statement on the ongoing issues at the Brooklyn Metropolitan Detention Center. Over the last 2 years, there have been steady reports of deteriorating conditions at MDC, harming inmates and correction officers alike, including chronic understaffing, perpetual solitary confinement, and widespread violence. Earlier this year, I toured MDC with the warden and executives of the Bureau of Prisons, all of whom acknowledged that improvements needed at the facility. There was an article in here that talked about how these repeated lockdowns that they have out there is not good for the psychological impact of inmates. Some of them end up taking their own joint or getting out, taking somebody else's joint. You know what I'm saying? All right, so here's an article dated this is dated April 19th, 2024. Judge Furman calls out the nightmarish conditions at the Brooklyn MDC. Dishes tainted by maggots and weevils, according to reports by several federal defenders. Despite MDC officials confirming such gross contaminations, inmates continue to be served insect-laden meals. In a scathing January 2024 decision, Southern District of New York Judge Jesse Furman refused to send the defendant to MDC Brooklyn due to the horrific conditions found there. The defendant, Gustavo Chavez, a 70-year-old with dangerous health issues, had pled guilty to selling controlled substances containing fentanyl. Although Chavez now faces a potential sentence of up to 20 years, he will not be detained in the infamous MDC Brooklyn while he awaits sentencing. The court determined that the poor conditions at MDC qualified as an exceptional reason under 18 U.S.C. as justification for the defendant's continued release. So they didn't even send this guy. He's just out awaiting sentencing. You're probably saying, well, why they didn't do Puff like that? I don't know. I don't have an answer for you. 4 inmates took their own lives in the last 3 years. It has gotten to the point that it is routine for judges in both districts, the Southern District of New York and the Eastern District, to not sentence inmates to MDC Brooklyn. Judge Furman concurs that confining inmates to their cells is tantamount to solitary confinement, a practice whose detrimental psychological effects, including increased risk of anxiety, depression, and tendencies, are well documented. One study found that compared to formerly incarcerated individuals who have not experienced restrictive housing, individuals who spent any time in restrictive housing were 24% more likely to die within a year after release, with significantly higher risks of taking their own joint and taking somebody else's joint. Moreover, they faced a 127% increased likelihood of dying from an opioid overdose within the first 2 weeks of getting released. One defendant kept a log of lockdowns, reported that he had been locked down for 137 days. What is that, 5 months, or more than half of the 245 days he spent at the facility. When the lights turned on, the Southern District Judge Torres held a hearing at MDC where she witnessed abundant water damage, a black blotchy mold. Judge Torres spoke with inmates who informed her of their disturbing realities. One inmate felt as though he was sleeping under a waterfall, with water pouring from the ceiling into his bed anytime it rained or snowed, and had to literally take the noose off of his cellmate's hand as he was trying to take his own joint. Another inmate showed her dressing on a gunshot wound that had not been changed for so long that he was beginning to have flashes in his eyes. Crazy, man. This is a New York Times article dated January 4th, 2024. Check this out, y'all. It is imperative that those detained pursuant to the order of the court are treated humanely. The judge, Jesse M. Furman, Federal District Court in Manhattan wrote, adding that at least 2 other judges in recent years had refused to order that defendants be sent to the jail, the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn. It has gotten to the point that it is routine for federal judges in Manhattan and Brooklyn to give reduced sentences to defendants based on conditions of confinement in the MDC. Prosecutors no longer even put up a fight, let alone dispute that the state of affairs is unacceptable. Judge Furman said the jail was so notoriously and in some instances egregiously slow in providing necessary medical and mental health treatment for inmates. He cited a case in which the jail had defied an order to transport an inmate for surgery to repair his cheek, which had been broken by an inmate in another facility. Because of the delays, the defendant was told that his cheek would have to be rebroken before surgery because it had healed improperly. So to me, like, these are all good things for Puff. You know, and this very well may be why the policy shift follows an August 5th ruling in federal court by Judge Gary Brown. The judge threatened to vacate a 9-month sentence of a 75-year-old convicted of a tax scam if he was sent to MDC Brooklyn, citing the dangerous and barbaric conditions at the jail. Judge Brown detailed instances of violence, including 2 murders and a 37-second stabbing assault that went unchallenged by correction officers until it was nearly over. So, you know, this could be a sentencing strategy by Puffy and his legal team to just say, yo, stay in MDC Brooklyn. You know, don't ask to get bail. Don't put up a big fight for bail. Just stay there and chill, because you're going to potentially get some rhythm when it comes to sentencing time, right? You're going to get some rhythm when it comes to sentencing time, right? It has gotten to the point that it is routine for federal judges in Manhattan and Brooklyn to give reduced sentences to defendants based on conditions of confinement at MDC. So Puffy could very well get time served when he goes for sentencing October the 3rd, 2025. He could get some levels taken off of his sentencing guideline range. What I'm saying is this could all be to his benefit, and very well could be one of the reasons why his defense team told him, say, yo, just chill. And he may have even said it, yo, I'm gonna chill here because we know what's going on with MDC Brooklyn. They know I'm doing this time here, so they got to show me some love when it comes down to sentencing, because I did over a year here. And all of this stuff that we're talking about is all documented. Sean G, Podcast with Soul. Puffy, this is a good one for Puff. Peace.